Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Council Station Alpha, watching Earth spin slowly below. The blue marble looked peaceful from here, with white clouds dancing across the surface. He had seen this view 1,000 times, but today something felt different. Today felt like an ending. The meeting hall buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. Jake had learned to understand most of them during his 20 years as Earth's representative. The Veltar spoke in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes. The Zephyrians clicked and whistled through their breathing tubes. The Korth growled in deep, rumbling voices that made the floor shake. And the Ethereals barely spoke at all, preferring to float in their energy bubbles and communicate through light patterns. Dr. Lisa Grant hurried to Jake's side, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. Her face was pale, and Jake could see worry in her brown eyes.
"Admiral, we need to talk," she said quietly. "I just received some information from my contacts in the science division."
Jake looked around the busy hall. Delegates from 800 different worlds filled the massive space. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few moved on mechanical platforms. After 150 years, humans had learned to work with all of them. "What is it, Doctor?" Lisa moved closer and lowered her voice.
"There's going to be a vote today. About Earth. About us."
Jake's stomach dropped. In all his years representing humanity, he had never heard those words spoken with such fear. What kind of vote? The kind we won't like. Before Lisa could explain, more. A deep tone filled the hall. The council session was about to begin. Jake straightened his blue uniform and walked to the human delegation seat. It was a small section compared to the other species, but humanity had earned respect through their service to the galaxy. Captain Rick Hayes sat in the military advisor chair behind Jake. Rick was younger, with sharp green eyes and the kind of calm confidence that came from commanding warships. Senator Amy Burke took her place at Jake's left, representing Earth's civilian government. She had been fighting for human rights in the Council for 10 years. The speaker, an ancient ethereal, named Luminous Guide, floated to the center of the hall. Its body was made of pure energy, shifting between blue and white light. When it spoke, the words appeared as glowing symbols in the air, translated instantly for every species. "Council members, we face a crisis that threatens the entire galaxy." Jake had heard similar words before. The galaxy was always facing some crisis or another. Usually it meant humans would be asked to send ships to keep the peace somewhere. Humanity had become the galaxy's peacekeepers, the species other races called when they needed problems solved. The Draktar Empire and the Hegemony Alliance have begun total war, Luminous Guide continued. Their fleets number in the millions. Their weapons can destroy entire star systems. If we do not act, this war will consume everything. Murmurs filled the hall. Jake had heard reports about fighting in the Outer Rim, but he didn't know it had gotten this bad. "We must create a strategic diversion," the speaker announced. "Something to draw their attention while our member worlds prepare defenses." "Senator," Burke leaned over to Jake. "A diversion? What kind of diversion?" Jake was wondering the same thing. In the past, diversions meant sending diplomatic missions or staging military exercises. Nothing too dangerous. Luminous Guide's light grew brighter. "After careful consideration, the Council has identified the perfect target for this diversion. A world that can draw the attention of both enemy fleets. A world whose sacrifice will save billions of others." The word sacrifice hit Jake like a physical blow. He looked around the hall and saw other delegates avoiding his eyes. The Veltar representative, who had shared meals with Jake countless times, studied his hands. The Zephyrian trade minister, who had called humans his closest allies, wouldn't look up from her desk. The target world is Earth. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Senator Burke grabbed his arm so hard it hurt. The plan is simple, Luminous Guide continued. Earth will lower its defenses and allow both enemy fleets to attack the system. While they fight over the human homeworld, our member species will have time to evacuate and prepare. Captain Hayes was on his feet before Jake could stop him. You're talking about genocide. 7 billion people live on that planet. Captain Hayes speaks the truth, Jake said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. You're asking us to sacrifice our entire species for a military tactic. The speaker's light dimmed slightly. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Admiral Morrison. Humanity has always understood this principle. It is why you make such excellent peacekeepers. Peacekeepers don't commit suicide on command, Senator Burke said, standing beside Jake. The vote will proceed. Luminous Guide announced. All in favor of Operation Strategic Sacrifice? Jake watched in horror as delegate after delegate raised their hands, tentacles, claws, or energy fields. Species that humanity had fought beside, traded with, and protected for over a century. Species that had called humans friends and allies. The Veltar, who wrote poetry about human courage, voted yes. The Zephyrians, who had made fortunes trading with Earth, voted yes. The Korth, who respected human warriors, voted yes. Even smaller species that humanity had saved from extinction voted to destroy Earth. All opposed? Jake raised his hand. He was alone. The vote is 847 in favor, 1 opposed. Operation Strategic Sacrifice is approved. The hall erupted in relieved chatter as delegates began making plans to evacuate their worlds. Jake sat in stunned silence, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Dr. Grant appeared at his side. Jake, we need to leave, now. They voted to kill us all, he whispered. Yes, they did. But Lisa told me something while you were voting. Captain Hayes leaned in close. Tell him, Doctor. Lisa looked around nervously, then whispered, My science. Contacts weren't just warning me about the vote. They were warning me that some council members have been planning this for months. They've been looking for an excuse to get rid of humanity. Why? Because they're afraid of us, Rick said quietly. Think about it, Jake. In 150 years, we've gone from barely understanding space travel to being the galaxy's best military force. We've solved problems they couldn't solve for thousands of years. We're growing too strong, too fast. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. They're not just sacrificing us for the war. They're sacrificing us because they see us as a threat. Exactly. And if we don't act fast, we're all going to die. Jake looked out at Earth one more time. His home, humanity's birth world. In 72 hours, it would become a battlefield where 2 alien empires would fight while his species died. Unless they did something about it. Rick, send a coded message to all human ships and stations. Use the old military channels, the ones the Council doesn't monitor. What's the message? Jake stood up, straightening his uniform. For the last time, he thought. Tell them Operation Exodus is a go. Tell them to take everyone who will come and leave nothing useful behind. What's Operation Exodus? Senator Burke asked. Jake smiled grimly. Something we've been planning since the day we joined this council. We never trusted them completely. Turns out we were right. Captain Rick Hayes had never seen so many ships moving at once. From his position on the bridge of the military transport New Horizon, he could see hundreds of vessels streaming away from Earth like a river of lights against the black of space. The evacuation had been going for 60 hours. They had 12 more before the Council expected Earth's defenses to be lowered. "Captain, we're getting another wave of civilian ships from the Luna colonies," reported Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from her engineering station. Kate was young, maybe 25, but she had designed half the ships that were now saving humanity. Rick watched the scanner as 30 more vessels joined the Exodus stream. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even old mining ships pressed into service. Every human vessel that could carry people was being used. "How many does that make total?" Rick asked. Kate checked her numbers. 11,400,000,000 people evacuated so far. We're ahead of schedule. Commander Ben Parker's voice crackled over the communication system from his coordination ship. "All fleet commanders, this is Parker. We've got a problem." Rick keyed his microphone. "What kind of problem, Ben?" "Council scouts are starting to patrol the outer system. They're probably wondering why so much traffic is moving away from Earth." Dr. Alex Chen looked up from his science station. Alex was the physicist who had made all of this possible. Without his work on the secret FTL drives, humanity would never have been able to escape. "How long until they figure out what we're doing?" Alex asked. "Not long," Ben replied. "Maybe 6 hours before they start asking serious questions." Rick felt his jaw tighten. 6 hours wasn't enough time. They still had millions of people to evacuate from Earth's surface and the massive industrial platforms around Jupiter and Saturn. "Kate, how are we doing on the special project?" Kate Sullivan smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone made when they were about to do something the other side wouldn't like. "The harvesting teams are way ahead of schedule. Turns out people work really fast when their planet is about to be sacrificed." Rick nodded. The harvesting was Kate's idea, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. If the Council wanted to use Earth as bait, they would find nothing worth taking. Every piece of useful technology was being stripped from the planet. Every factory was being dismantled. Every computer, every vehicle, every piece of equipment that could be moved was being loaded onto transport ships. Even the orbital stations were being broken down into parts. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was what they were doing to Earth itself. "Alex, report on the atmospheric processors." Dr. Chen grinned. "Working perfectly. We've removed 60% of the oxygen from the atmosphere and stored it in the cargo holds. The nitrogen is going next, then the carbon dioxide. By the time we're done, Earth won't even have air to breathe." Rick had to admire the plan. The Council thought they were getting a living world to use as bait in their war. Instead, they would find a dead rock with no atmosphere, no technology, and no people. Just an empty ball of dirt floating in space. "Captain Hayes, this is the Surface Coordination Team," a new voice called over the radio. "We've finished emptying the oceans." Rick blinked. "All of them?" "Every drop. Turns out when you have enough cargo ships and the right equipment, you can move a lot of water. We've also stripped the topsoil from all the continents. If anyone wants to grow food on Earth after this, they'll have to bring their own dirt." Kate laughed from her station. "I love this job." The bridge fell quiet for a moment as everyone thought about what they were doing. They were stealing an entire planet. Not conquering it or destroying it, but literally taking it apart and carrying it away. "Ben, what's the status on the outer colonies?" "Mars is empty. All 4 million people evacuated yesterday. The asteroid mining stations are packed up and gone. The Jupiter industrial platforms are being moved as we speak. What about the secret shipyards? Ben's voice carried a note of satisfaction. That's the beautiful part, Rick. The Council never knew about them. We've been building ships in hidden locations for 50 years. All those mining operations and research stations they thought we were running, they were actually shipyards. Rick smiled. Humanity had learned early that the other species in the Council didn't think much of human intelligence. They saw humans as useful soldiers and decent diplomats, but not as great thinkers or builders. That blind spot had cost them. How many ships are we talking about, Ben? 12,000 combat vessels, 40,000 support ships, and 7 arc ships that can carry 1 billion people each. The bridge went silent. Even Rick hadn't known the numbers were that high. 12,000 warships? Kate whispered. The Council thinks our entire fleet is 300 ships. The Council thinks a lot of things that aren't true, Alex said. They think we're primitive. They think we're grateful for their protection. They think we'll die quietly when they order us to sacrifice ourselves. Speaking of dying quietly, Ben's voice cut in, we've got Council ships approaching the inner system. Looks like they want to make sure we're following their orders. Rick felt his muscles tense. This was the moment they had all been waiting for and dreading. All ships, this is Captain Hayes. Begin final phase evacuation. All remaining surface. Personnel have 1 hour to reach transport ships. He switched to a private channel. Kate, is the surprise ready? Which surprise? We have several. The big one. Kate's grin got wider. Oh, that surprise! Yes, sir. Ready and waiting. Rick took a deep breath. In 1 hour, the Council would learn what happened when you betrayed humanity. They would learn that humans were not the simple, grateful species they thought they were. Alex, power up the new FTL drives. All ships prepare for jump to the rally point. Coordinates locked in, Captain. The Centauri system is ready to receive us. The Centauri system was empty of life, but it had everything humanity needed to start. Over. Worlds they could terraform, asteroids they could mine, and most importantly, it was far enough away that the Council would never find them. Ben, any word from Admiral Morrison? He's on the last transport off Earth. Says to tell you that. The Council delegation is demanding to inspect our defense systems. What did he tell them? That our systems are powering down as ordered, and they're welcome to inspect them in person. Rick laughed. If the Council wanted to inspect Earth's defenses in person, they were going to get quite a surprise. All ships. Final evacuation complete. Beginning jump sequence. One by one, the human ships activated their FTL drives and disappeared into the stars. The cargo ships went first, carrying the millions of tons of equipment and resources they had stripped from Earth. Then the passenger ships, filled with 12 billion refugees who were no longer refugees, but pioneers heading to a new home. The warships went last, just in case the Council tried to stop them. Kate, activate the surprise. Activating now, sir. Rick watched his screen as energy readings spiked all across the Earth system. Every piece of infrastructure they couldn't take with them was being destroyed. Every military base, every research facility, every piece of technology that might be useful to an enemy was being reduced to atoms. But the best part was happening on Earth itself. Alex, confirm atmospheric removal. Complete, sir. Earth now has no atmosphere, no water, no topsoil, and no magnetic field. We took that too. How did we take the magnetic field? Trade secret. Let's just say the planet's core is now significantly different than it used to be. As the last human ship jumped to FTL, Rick took one final look at Earth. It looked like a gray, dead moon. Nothing lived there. Nothing grew there. Nothing useful remained. The Council had wanted to sacrifice Earth to save their own worlds. Instead, they would find that Earth was already dead, killed not by enemy weapons but by human ingenuity. "Set course for the Centauri system," Rick ordered. "Time to go home." "Sir?" Kate asked. "Earth was our home." Rick shook his head. "Earth was where we came from. Home is where we're going, and this time we're going to make sure nobody can take it away from us." The ship jumped to FTL, leaving the solar system empty except for a dead world and a few very confused council. Observers who were about to discover that humanity had vanished completely, taking everything useful with them. Admiral Carol Stone stood on the observation deck of the flagship Liberty's Edge and watched the 7th planet of the Kepler system spin below her. 50 years had passed since humanity left Earth, and this world would soon become another jewel in their growing empire. The terraforming ships were already at work, turning the dead planet into something that could support human life. In 5 years, it would have breathable air, flowing water, and green plants. In 10 years, it would be home to 50 million people. "Admiral, the survey teams have finished their report," said Dr. Ryan Torres, approaching with his usual excited energy. Ryan was humanity's best xenoarchaeologist, and he had just returned from exploring the ruins they had found on the planet's surface. Carol turned from the window. At 42, she was the daughter of refugees from the Exodus. She had never seen Earth, but she carried its memory in her heart like a burning coal. "What did you find down there, Ryan?" Ryan's excitement faded, replaced by something darker. "You need to see this for yourself, Admiral. It's not good." Carol followed Ryan to the briefing room where Captain Megan Clark was waiting. Megan commanded the scout ship Far Wanderer and had spent the last decade exploring unknown regions of space, always looking for new worlds humanity could claim. "Show her the recordings," Megan said grimly. Ryan activated the holographic display. Images of alien ruins filled the air above the table. The buildings were elegant and strange, with flowing curves and crystalline spires. "These ruins are about 800 years old," Ryan explained. "The species that built them called themselves the Ethon. They were peaceful, artistic, and highly advanced." Carol studied the images. "What happened to them?" "The same thing that almost happened to us." Ryan changed the display to show ancient records carved into metal walls. The writing was alien, but the translation appeared beside each symbol. "This is their final message," Ryan said. "Listen to this. The Galactic Council has voted to sacrifice our homeworld as a strategic diversion in their war against the Skorath. Empire, we are to lower our defenses and allow enemy fleets to battle over our cities. The Council promises this sacrifice will save countless other worlds." Carol felt ice form in her stomach. "They did this before." "Oh, it gets worse," Megan said. "Tell her about the others." Ryan switched to a different display showing a star map. Red markers dotted the space around them. "In the past 50 years, we found 17 dead civilizations. All of them were sacrificed by the Council for various strategic reasons. All of them were told their deaths would serve the greater good." Carol stared at the map. 17 species, wiped out by the same council that had tried to destroy humanity. "How many people are we talking about?" "Billions," Ryan said quietly. "Maybe trillions." The Council has been doing this for over 2,000 years. Whenever they face a crisis, they pick a member species and feed them to their enemies. Chief Engineer Paul Adams entered the briefing room, carrying a data pad filled with technical specifications. Paul was old enough to remember Earth, and his hatred of the Council burned as bright as ever. Admiral, I've got the latest reports from the fleet construction yards. Go ahead, Paul. We now have 7 great fleets scattered across this region of space. Each fleet has over 2,000 warships, plus support vessels and colony ships. Total human population is just over 20 billion. Carol nodded. Humanity had not just survived their exile, they had thrived. The Council's betrayal had forced them to become stronger, smarter, and more unified than they had ever been. What about our technology? Paul's weathered face broke into a grin. We're about 50 years ahead of anything the Council has. Our weapons can punch through their best shields like paper. Our ships are faster, tougher, and carry more firepower than anything they've ever built. And our allies? That's the best part, Megan said. We've made contact with survivors from 11 of the species the Council betrayed. They've been hiding in dead systems and forgotten corners of space, just like us. When they learned what we were doing, they asked to join us. Carol felt a warm satisfaction spread through her chest. Humanity was no longer alone in their anger. How many ships do our allies contribute? About 3,000 total, Paul said. Not as advanced as ours, but they're eager to fight, really eager. Ryan activated a new display showing recent intelligence. Reports. Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The Council has been looking for us. Let them look. Space is big. They're not just looking randomly. 3 months ago, they sent ambassadors to the Outer Rim territories. They're claiming they made a mistake with Earth and want to renegotiate humanity's membership in the Council. Carol laughed, but there was no humor in it. A mistake? They voted 847 to 1 to exterminate our entire species. That's not the real reason they want us back, Megan said. My scouts have been monitoring Council communications. They're losing the war they started when they sacrificed Earth. Losing how badly? The Draktar Empire and the Hegemony Alliance have destroyed over half the Council's member worlds. The survivors are scattered and desperate. They need military help, and they know humanity produces the best soldiers in the galaxy. Paul leaned forward. Admiral, they're scared. For the first time in their history, the Council faces a threat they can't handle by sacrificing someone else. Carol walked back to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the species that had tried to murder humanity was now begging for human help. What's our current military strength compared to the Council? We could probably take them in a straight fight, Paul said. But that's not accounting for the war they're already fighting. If we wanted to, we could wait for their enemies to finish them off and then move in to pick up the pieces. Any word on what happened to Earth? Ryan activated one more display. Our long-range scouts finally made it back to the solar system last year. Earth is still there, but it's completely dead. No atmosphere, no water, no life. The Council tried to use it as bait, but there was nothing there to attract enemy fleets. Good, Carol said. Let them have their dead rock. Megan stood up. Admiral, my scouts report that Council ambassadors are heading toward the Centauri system. They must have figured out where we went. Carol turned back to her officers. These were the children and grandchildren of the Exodus generation. They had been born in space, raised on frontier worlds, and trained to fight for humanity's survival. How long until the ambassadors arrive? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Perfect. That gives us time to prepare a proper welcome. Paul raised an eyebrow.
What kind of welcome?
Carol smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her father, who had been one of the original Exodus commanders, the kind that will make it very clear how much humanity has changed since we left Earth. Paul, send a message to all 7 fleet commanders. Tell them to converge on the Centauri system. All 7 fleets, Admiral. That's over 14,000 warships. I want the Council ambassadors to see exactly what they're dealing with. I want them to understand that the weak, grateful species they tried to sacrifice 50 years ago no longer exists. Ryan looked worried. Admiral, are we going to war with the Council? Carol considered the question. War was certainly an option. Humanity now had the strength to crush the Council completely. But there were better ways to handle betrayers. Not war, Ryan. Justice. The Council taught us that the galaxy respects only strength and that trust is a weakness. They taught us that survival requires being willing to sacrifice others. It's time we showed them how well we learned those lessons. Megan grinned. What are your orders, Admiral? Prepare the fleet for a demonstration. I want those Council ambassadors to see what 50 years of human innovation can accomplish. I want them to meet the species they betrayed and learn what we've become. Paul nodded. And after the demonstration? Carol looked out at the stars one more time. After the demonstration, we're going to offer the Council the same choice they offered us 50 years ago. They can accept the consequences of their actions, or they can face the alternative, which is, they can learn what it feels like to be expendable. The Council ambassadors arrived at the Centauri system expecting to find desperate human refugees willing to negotiate. Instead, they found the largest military fleet in galactic history waiting for them. Ambassador Nicole Davis stood in the reception hall of the flagship Terra's Vengeance and watched the alien delegates file in. She recognized most of them from the historical records, the same species that had voted to sacrifice Earth 50 years ago. The Veltar ambassador was a tall, graceful being with silver skin and musical voice. The Zephyrian representative clicked nervously through his breathing tubes. The Korth delegate, a massive warrior covered in natural armor, kept looking around the room with what might have been respect or fear. General Linda Wright entered the hall wearing full military dress uniform. Linda commanded the Human Marine Corps, and her presence sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer interested in purely diplomatic solutions. Honored ambassadors, Nicole said in perfect galactic standard, welcome to human space. Please, take your seats. The aliens sat at the conference table, but Nicole noticed they all seemed uncomfortable. The Veltar ambassador kept staring at the view screen that showed the human fleet outside. 14,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, stretching as far as the eye could see. Ambassador Davis, the Veltar began, we come bearing an apology from the Galactic Council. The vote to sacrifice Earth was made in haste during a time of crisis. We now realize it was an error in judgment. Nicole smiled coldly. An error in judgment. Is that what you call attempted genocide? The Zephyrian delegate whistled nervously. The Council wishes to offer humanity full reinstatement with expanded privileges, territory rights, trade agreements, and a permanent seat on the ruling committee. The same ruling committee that voted 847 to 1 to exterminate us. Captain Sam Mitchell entered the room. Sam commanded Terra's Vengeance, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. His arrival was perfectly timed to interrupt the negotiations. Admiral, Stone's compliments, Sam said to Nicole. She wanted me to inform our guests about the ship they're currently aboard. Nicole nodded. Please, Captain, Tell our visitors about your vessel. Sam turned to the alien ambassadors. Terra's vengeance is 150 kilometers long and carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Its shields can withstand direct hits from supernovas, and its weapon systems are based on technology the Council has never seen. The Korth delegate leaned forward. Impressive claims, human, but claims are not proof. Sam smiled. Would you like a demonstration? Before anyone could answer, Sam activated a holographic display showing a large asteroid floating in space about 1,000,000 kilometers away. That asteroid is roughly the same size and composition as a Council dreadnought. Watch carefully. Sam pressed a single button. A beam of pure energy shot from Terra's vengeance and struck the asteroid. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire asteroid simply ceased to exist, reduced to its component atoms in an instant. The alien ambassadors sat in stunned silence. That was one shot from one weapon on one ship, Sam said casually. We have 14,000 ships like this one. General Wright stepped forward. Perhaps our guests would like to hear about our ground forces as well? The Veltar ambassador held up one delicate hand. That won't be necessary, General. We can see that humanity has developed significantly since leaving Earth. Nicole activated another display showing star charts of human territory. In 50 years, we've established colonies on 300 worlds. Our population has grown to 20 billion. We've built an industrial base that can produce warships faster than the Council can count them. Most impressive, the Zephyrian said. The Council would be honored to welcome such capable allies back into the galactic community. Allies? Nicole laughed. You still don't understand, do you? She activated a new display showing the ruins Dr. Torres had discovered. We found them, she said simply. All 17 species you sacrificed before us. The color drained from the Veltar ambassador's silver face. The Zephyrian's breathing tubes went completely silent. Even the massive Korth delegate seemed to shrink in his chair. We found the Ethon ruins. We found the Sylvan burial worlds. We found the memorial ships of the Cascade Republic, all of them destroyed by Council votes, just like the one that targeted Earth. Nicole switched to recordings of the alien survivors humanity had rescued. We also found the ones who escaped, 11 species that the Council thought were extinct. They're our allies now. General Wright smiled grimly. They're very eager to discuss their experiences with Council representatives. The Korth delegate found his voice first. Those were different times. Different circumstances. The Council has learned from its mistakes. Have you? Captain Mitchell asked. Because our intelligence reports suggest that you're currently discussing which species to sacrifice next to save yourselves from the war you started. The alien ambassadors exchanged nervous glances. The Draktar Empire and Hegemony Alliance have destroyed 60% of Council space, Nicole continued. Your fleets are scattered, your worlds are burning, and you're looking for someone to blame it on. The Veltar ambassador leaned forward desperately. Humanity could help us end this war. Together we could restore peace to the galaxy. Peace? Nicole stood up. You want to talk about peace? Let me show you what peace looks like. She activated the room's main display screen. The view showed a massive space station under construction in the asteroid belt. The station was easily the size of a small moon, with hundreds of construction ships working around it. That is New Geneva Station. It will serve as the capital of the Terran Confederation. Terran Confederation? The Zephyrian asked. 43 species have joined us, not as subjects or protectorates, but as equal members. Species that were abandoned by the Council, betrayed by the Council, or simply tired of Council politics. General Wright activated her own display showing military formations. The Confederation fleet now numbers over 30,000 ships. We have the strongest military in galactic history. And the most advanced technology, Captain Mitchell added. We've had 50 years to develop weapons and defenses without Council oversight or limitations. Nicole walked around the table to stand directly in front of the alien ambassadors. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to what's left of the Council and deliver our message. What message? The Veltar whispered. The Terran. Confederation officially recognizes the dissolution of the Galactic Council. Any Council forces that enter Confederation space will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The Korth delegate stood up angrily. You cannot simply declare the Council dissolved. We have governed the galaxy for thousands of years. You govern through fear, betrayal, and the sacrifice of innocent species, Nicole replied calmly. That ends now. General Wright stepped beside Nicole. The species you betrayed are under Confederation protection. Any attempt to harm them will be considered an act of war. Furthermore, Captain Mitchell added, we're offering refugee status to any species that wants to leave Council space and join the Confederation. We suspect you'll be surprised how many accept our offer. The Veltar ambassador's voice shook. And if the Council refuses to accept these demands? Nicole smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then you'll discover what it feels like to be expendable. The same choice you offered us 50 years ago. She gestured toward the viewport showing the human fleet. 14,000 ships, Ambassador. Each one more powerful than anything in your navy. Each one crewed by people who remember what you tried to do to Earth. The galaxy has learned to respect strength, General Wright said. You taught us that lesson very well. The alien ambassadors sat in stunned silence, finally understanding that the weak species they had tried to sacrifice had become the dominant power in the galaxy. You have 24 hours to return to Council space, Nicole said. After that, any Council vessels in our territory will be destroyed without warning. Captain Mitchell escorted the shaken ambassadors to their ships. As they prepared to leave, the Veltar ambassador turned back one last time. What you're doing will bring chaos to the galaxy. Nicole looked out at the human fleet, at the allied ships from dozens of species, at the space stations where billions of people were building. A new future. No, Ambassador. What we're doing will bring justice. The chaos already happened when you decided that some species were more expendable than others. The Council ships jumped to FTL, carrying the news that humanity had not just survived their betrayal, but had become the most powerful force in the galaxy. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of the Terran Confederation had begun. Captain Sarah Blake stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Frontier and stared at the readings on her screen. What they had found in the Andromeda sector was impossible, but the sensors didn't lie. Captain, you need to see this, called Lieutenant Danny Crawford from his science station. Danny was young, born on one of the Confederation's ring worlds, and he had never seen anything like what they were looking at now. Sarah walked over to Danny's station, her boots clicking on the metal deck. As a third-generation Confederation officer, she had been raised on stories of humanity's exodus from Earth and the betrayal by the Galactic Council. But those were old stories. This was something new. What am I looking at, Lieutenant? Danny pointed at his display. It's a fleet, Captain, but not like anything in our databases. The screen showed dozens of massive ships floating in the darkness between stars. They were huge, each one larger than a Confederation city ship. But they looked wrong somehow, with twisted metal hulls and energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Are they alive?" Sarah asked. "That's the problem, Captain. Our sensors can't tell. They're giving off life signs, but also machine signatures. It's like they're both organic and mechanical at the same time." Chief Engineer Pete Morgan looked up from his repair work on the main console. Pete was old enough to remember the war against the Council remnants, and his face showed worry. "Captain, those ships are moving toward Confederation space. Slowly, but they're definitely heading our way." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. The Terran Confederation had been at peace for 10 years. The last of the old Council forces had either joined them or been defeated. No one had expected a new threat to appear from empty space. "Danny, how long until they reach our outer colonies?" "At their current speed, about 6 months. Pete, send a priority message to Confederation Command. Tell them we've found something that Admiral Stone needs to see personally." Sarah activated the ship's main viewer and looked at the strange fleet again. There was something familiar about those ships, something that nagged at the back of her mind. "Captain," Danny said quietly, "there's something else. I've been analyzing their energy signatures, and I think I know what these ships are." "Tell me." "They're Council ships, but old ones. Really old. I'm talking thousands of years old." Pete stopped his repair work and looked up. "That's impossible. The Council only existed for 3,000 years, and we have records of all their ship designs." Danny shook his head. "These aren't in our records because they're from before the Council existed. I think these are ships from the first species that tried to unite the galaxy." Sarah stared at the screen. "You're saying there was a galactic government before the Council?" "More than that, Captain. I think this is what became the Council. I think these ships contain the original founders, and they've been traveling through empty space for thousands of years." The communication system crackled to life. "New Frontier. This is Admiral Stone. We received your message. What exactly have you found out there?" Sarah activated the reply channel. "Admiral, we've discovered a fleet of unknown ships heading toward Confederation space. Lieutenant Crawford believes they may be connected to pre-Council history. Send us everything you have, Captain. And stay well away from those ships until we can get reinforcements to your position." "Understood, Admiral." Sarah cut the connection and turned back to her crew. "Danny, I want a full analysis of those ships. Pete, make sure our weapons are ready, just in case." For the next 3 hours, they studied the mysterious fleet. The ships moved in perfect formation, like they were controlled by a single mind. Their energy output was enormous, but they showed no signs of noticing the small Confederation scout ship watching them. "Captain," Danny called suddenly, "I'm getting a transmission." "From the fleet?" "Yes, but it's not directed at us. It's a general broadcast in Old Galactic Standard, the language the first Council species used to speak." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. "Can you translate it?" Danny worked at his console for several minutes, running the message through the ship's computers. Finally, he looked up with a pale face. "Captain, you're not going to like this." "Tell me." The message says, "Children of the galaxy, we have returned. The experiment has failed. The young species have proven themselves unworthy of guidance. Correction protocols will now be implemented." Pete stood up slowly. "Correction protocols?" "There's more," Danny continued. "The message talks about the Council failure and the human contamination. It says the original plan was for the Council to keep the younger species weak and divided." Sarah felt pieces of an ancient puzzle clicking together in her mind. The council wasn't just corrupt, it was designed to be corrupt. What do you mean, Captain? Think about it. For 3,000 years, the council existed to keep species fighting each other or dependent on council protection. They never tried to actually unite the galaxy or help anyone become stronger. Danny nodded slowly. And when humanity refused to be sacrificed and built something better, it proved that the system wasn't working. So now the original builders are coming back to fix their mistake, Pete said grimly. Sarah activated the communication system again. Admiral Stone, we need to talk immediately. This time, Admiral Stone's face appeared on the main screen. Carol Stone was older now, with gray hair and lines around her eyes. But her gaze was still sharp as steel. Captain Blake, report. Admiral, we've translated part of their transmission. These ships aren't just ancient council vessels. They're the ships of the species that created the council in the first place. Carol's expression darkened. Created it. The council claimed to be a natural alliance of species working together. That was a lie, Admiral. The council was designed to keep younger species weak. It was a control system, and humanity broke it when we refused to be sacrificed. And now the original controllers are coming back. Yes, Admiral, and their message suggests they plan to correct what they see as the failure of their experiment. Carol was quiet for a long moment, staring at something off-screen. Finally, she spoke again. Captain, I want you to shadow that fleet, but stay hidden. We need to know everything about those ships before they reach Confederation space. What about reinforcements? I'm sending the entire Third Fleet to your position. General Taylor is mobilizing the Marine Corps, and President Johnson is calling an emergency session of the Confederation Assembly. Admiral, there's something else. The transmission mentioned human contamination. I think they see humanity as the source of the problem. Carol smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Good. That means we're doing something right. After the Admiral signed off, Sarah turned back to her crew. Well, gentlemen, it looks like we've found ourselves in the middle of another war. Pete finished his repairs and started checking the weapon systems. At least this time we know it's coming. Danny was still analyzing the alien transmission. Captain, I'm finding more data buried in their signal. Ship specifications, troop numbers, weapon capabilities. How do we compare? Their individual ships are more powerful than ours, but they only have about 200 vessels. We have over 50,000 ships in the Confederation fleet. Numbers aren't everything, Sarah said. These beings had thousands of years to perfect their technology. They created a system that controlled the entire galaxy for 3 millennia. But they didn't count on humanity, Pete pointed out. They didn't expect anyone to break their system and build something better. Sarah looked at the alien fleet on her screen. Somewhere in those ships were the beings who had designed the Council to keep species like humanity weak and divided. They had created a system of betrayal and sacrifice that had lasted for thousands of years. Now they were coming to restore that system. Danny, send a message to all Confederation worlds. Tell them that the real enemy has finally revealed itself. What should I say, Captain? Tell them that 50 years ago the Council tried to sacrifice humanity to preserve their corrupt system. Now we know why. Tell them that the species who created that system are coming back, and they're not going to like what we've built in their absence. Sarah watched the ancient ships continue their slow approach toward human space. Tell them that humanity didn't survive the Council's betrayal just to submit to their creators. President Marcus Johnson stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall of New Geneva Station and looked out at the representatives of 67 species. The hall was massive, built to accommodate beings of every size and shape imaginable. Where the old council chambers had been designed to make some species feel small and unimportant, this hall treated every delegate as an equal. 6 months had passed since the council ambassadors had returned to their territory with humanity's ultimatum. The response had been swift and predictable. More war, more chaos, and more desperate attempts to find someone to blame for their failures. "Fellow beings of the Terran Confederation," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "Today we gather not to mourn the past, but to celebrate the future we have built together." Admiral Carol Stone sat in the front row, wearing the dress uniform of the Confederation Space Navy. Beside her sat General Kevin Taylor, the Supreme Military Commander of all Allied forces. Both had played crucial roles in bringing the galaxy to this moment. When humanity was betrayed by the Galactic Council 50 years ago, we could have chosen revenge, Marcus continued. We could have spent our exile planning destruction and conquest. Instead, we chose to build something better. The alien delegates listened with attention that would have been impossible in the old council chambers. Here, every species had an equal voice. The former slaves of the Veltar sat beside their former masters. The scattered survivors of the 17 sacrificed species shared tables with refugees from the council wars. Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood up when Marcus called her name. Emma was humanity's chief scientist and the architect of the technological revolution that had made the Confederation possible. Dr. Rodriguez will now present our latest achievements, Marcus announced. Emma activated the hall's holographic display system. Images of terraformed worlds filled the air above the delegates. In the past 5 years, we have terraformed 43 dead worlds, making them suitable for life, she said. Our atmospheric processors can create breathable air from raw rock. Our ecological engineers can design entire ecosystems from scratch. The display changed to show massive construction projects in space. We have built 17 ring worlds around dying stars, creating living space for trillions of beings. We have constructed artificial planets where none existed before. A delegate from the Remnant Coalition, survivors of a species the Council had sacrificed 300 years ago, raised a tentacle. How is this possible? Such technology would take thousands of years to develop. Emma smiled. When you're fighting for survival, you learn to innovate quickly. When 50 different species pool their knowledge and work together, you can accomplish anything. General Taylor stood up next. Perhaps our friends would like to hear about our military progress. The display showed star charts marked with Confederation territories. The space they controlled now stretched across a quarter of the galaxy. The old war between the Draktar Empire and the Hegemony Alliance ended 3 months ago, Taylor reported. Both sides had exhausted themselves fighting over the scraps of council space. What happened to them? Asked a delegate from the Cathara, a species that had joined the Confederation after fleeing council taxation. They discovered that fighting us was very different from fighting the council, Taylor said with satisfaction. The Draktar Empire sent a fleet of 10,000 ships to test our defenses. We destroyed them without losing a single vessel. Admiral Stone activated another display showing recent battle footage. The Confederation fleet moved like a single organism, their ships working together with perfect coordination. Enemy vessels were swept aside like leaves in a storm. The Hegemony Alliance tried a different approach, Stone said. They attempted to negotiate. We offered them the same terms we offer everyone. Join the Confederation as equals or face the consequences of continued aggression. Did they accept? Someone asked. 60% of their member species voted to join us. The other 40% decided to fight. That war lasted exactly 18 days. The hall fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. In less than a year, the Confederation had become the undisputed power in the galaxy. President Johnson returned to the podium. But we didn't gather here today to discuss military victories. We gathered to discuss the future. He gestured to a section of the hall where the former council species sat. The Veltar, Zephyrians, Korth, and others who had voted to sacrifice Earth now sat as petitioners, hoping for membership in the organization they had tried to destroy. The question before us is simple, Marcus said. What do we do with the species that betrayed us? A delegate from the hegemony refugees stood up. They destroyed our worlds. They scattered our people. They deserve no mercy. A survivor from the sacrificed Ethon civilization nodded agreement. The council caused suffering beyond measure. They should face justice for their crimes. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Rodriguez stood up again. "If I may address the assembly," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "The floor recognizes Dr. Rodriguez." Emma looked around the hall, her eyes stopping on each group of delegates. 50 years ago, my parents were refugees, fleeing Earth. They had lost everything, their home, their world, their future. They could have spent their lives seeking revenge against the species that betrayed them. She paused, letting her words sink in. Instead, they chose to build something better. They chose to prove that humanity was stronger than its enemies believed. They chose to show the galaxy what cooperation could accomplish. Emma activated a new display showing the populations of Confederation worlds. Today, over 100 billion beings live in Confederation space. They have food, shelter, freedom, and hope. They have these things because we chose construction over destruction. The Veltar ambassador, a different individual than the one who had tried to negotiate 6 months ago, stood up slowly. "Dr. Rodriguez speaks wisdom," the ambassador said in his musical voice. "The Confederation has shown mercy to species that showed none to others. You have proven yourselves to be better than those who betrayed you." General Taylor stepped forward. "Mercy is a luxury we can afford because we are strong, but mercy does not mean forgetting." He activated a display showing a massive memorial wall being constructed in space near New Geneva Station. This memorial will list every species betrayed by the Council, every world sacrificed for political convenience, every civilization destroyed by the old order's policies. The wall was enormous, stretching for kilometers through space. Names were being carved into its surface by robotic builders, each one representing a lost people. At the top of the memorial, Taylor continued, will be Earth's name. Not because human suffering was more important than others, but because Earth was the last world the Council tried to sacrifice. Because humanity was the species that said, "No more." President Johnson returned to the center of the hall. "The Terran Confederation offers membership to any species that accepts our principles: equality, cooperation, and the protection of all sentient life." He looked directly at the former Council delegates. "This includes the species that betrayed us. But membership comes with conditions." The Korth representative, smaller than the massive warrior who had tried to intimidate humanity 6 months ago, stepped forward. "What conditions?" "Full disclosure of all Council records regarding the sacrificed species, reparations to the survivors, and a formal apology to every being harmed by Council policies." The Zephyrian delegate clicked nervously. And if we accept these conditions, Admiral Stone smiled. Then you become part of something greater than the Council ever was. You become part of a civilization that protects the weak instead of sacrificing them. And if we refuse? The Veltar ambassador asked quietly. General Taylor's expression grew cold. Then you remain outside Confederation space, free to govern yourselves as you see fit. But any aggression against Confederation members will be met with overwhelming force. The former council delegates huddled together, whispering in their various languages. Finally, the Veltar ambassador stood up. The remaining council species accept your terms, he announced. We request membership in the Terran Confederation. The hall erupted in discussion as delegates from dozens of species debated this development. Some were angry, demanding harsher punishment for the council species. Others supported the decision to show mercy. President Johnson raised his hand for silence. The vote will be held tomorrow. Tonight I ask each of you to consider what kind of galaxy we want to build. As the assembly dispersed, Admiral Stone approached the memorial display. The names of the lost civilizations scrolled past in an endless list of tragedy. Dr. Rodriguez joined her at the display. Do you think we're making the right choice, Admiral? Carol Stone looked up at Earth's name at the top of the memorial. 50 years ago, they tried to make us victims. Instead, they made us stronger. Now we have the chance to be better than they ever were. And if some of the council species haven't really changed? Carol smiled grimly. Then they'll learn what happens when you betray the Terran Confederation. We're not the weak, grateful species they remember. We're something new. The memorial wall continued to grow, a permanent reminder of the price of betrayal and the power of those who refuse to be victims. At its base, a simple inscription. General Kevin Taylor stood in the war room of New Geneva Station and studied the holographic display showing the approaching ancient fleet. 3 months had passed since Captain Blake first discovered the ships, and now they were close enough for detailed scans. The news isn't good, reported Dr. Emma Rodriguez from her position at the science console. These ships are more advanced than anything we've seen before. Their hulls are made from materials that don't exist in our periodic table. President Marcus Johnson paced around the display table, his face showing the strain of the past weeks. The Confederation Assembly had been in constant session, debating how to respond to this new threat. What about their weapons? Marcus asked. Admiral Carol Stone activated a new section of the display. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. Their energy shields can deflect anything in our arsenal, and their propulsion system appears to manipulate space itself. Colonel Lisa Barnes, the Confederation's intelligence chief, stepped forward with a data pad in her hands. We've decoded more of their transmissions. The species calls itself the Architects. They've been traveling through empty space for over 5,000 years. Why? Asked Dr. Rodriguez. Why leave the galaxy for so long? According to their messages, they were waiting for their experiment to succeed. The Council was supposed to gradually eliminate all species they considered genetically unstable or evolutionarily dangerous. General Taylor felt his jaw clench. Species like humanity. Exactly. The architects believed that only certain types of civilizations should be allowed to develop advanced technology. The Council was their tool for controlling and eliminating the rest. President Johnson stopped pacing. And when humanity broke their system and built the Confederation, they decided their experiment had failed catastrophically. Now they're returning to implement what they call the final solution. Admiral Stone brought up tactical projections on the display. They plan to destroy every world that shows signs of what they call chaotic development. That includes all human colonies, most of our allied species, and even the reformed council worlds. How many people are we talking about? Marcus asked, quietly. 200 billion souls across 800 worlds, Colonel Barnes replied. They plan to wipe out everything we've built and start over with species they consider more controllable. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted sections of the alien fleet. There's something else. Our long-range scans detected organic components inside their ships. I think the architects aren't just traveling in these vessels. I think they've become part of them. What do you mean? I mean they've merged with their technology. They're not separate beings anymore. They're living ships with artificial intelligence that thinks it's divine. General Taylor studied the tactical display. What are our military options? Limited, Admiral Stone admitted. We have numerical superiority, but their individual ships outclass ours significantly. A direct confrontation would cost us millions of lives and probably end in defeat. What about evacuation? We couldn't move 200 billion people fast enough, and they're monitoring all major space routes. Any large-scale evacuation would be detected and destroyed. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the magnitude of the threat they faced. There is one possibility, Dr. Rodriguez said slowly, but it's extremely dangerous. President Johnson looked up. Tell us. The architects have been traveling for 5,000 years. Their ships are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly old. And they've been isolated from the galaxy all this time. Meaning what? Meaning they don't know about our recent technological developments. They're basing their plans on data that's 50 years old. General Taylor leaned forward. What kind of developments? Dr. Rodriguez activated a classified section of the display. Project Prometheus. We've been working on it in secret since the war with the Council remnants ended. The display showed technical specifications for something that looked like a combination of ship, space station, and weapon. It's a reality manipulation device, Emma explained. Based on technology we reverse-engineered from the ancient ruins. Dr. Torres discovered. If it works, it can rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area of space. Admiral Stone stared at the specifications. Rewrite physics? That's impossible. Not impossible. Just incredibly dangerous. The device requires enormous amounts of energy and perfect coordination to operate safely. What happens if it doesn't work safely? Marcus asked. Worst-case scenario? We accidentally tear a hole in space-time and destroy the solar system. Colonel Barnes looked up from her intelligence reports. There's something else you should know. We've detected smaller ships launching from the main architect fleet, scout vessels probably sent to gather current intelligence on Confederation capabilities. How long until they reach our space? 2 weeks. General Taylor made a decision. We need to accelerate Project Prometheus. How long would it take to make the device operational? With every scientist and engineer in the Confederation working on it? Maybe 10 days. Do it. And prepare the Third Fleet for a delaying action. We need to keep those scouts from reporting back to the main fleet. Admiral Stone nodded. I'll deploy our fastest ships to intercept the scouts. If we're lucky, we can buy some extra time. President Johnson activated the Assembly communication system. This is President Johnson to all Confederation worlds. We are now at a state of total war. All civilian shipping is suspended. All military reserves are activated. Every ship, every station, every resource is now dedicated to the defense of our civilization. Over the next week, the Confederation transformed itself into a war machine. Civilian factories were converted to military production. Scientists worked around the clock on Project Prometheus. Fleet Admiral Stone deployed every available ship to defensive positions. Captain Sarah Blake's ship, New Frontier, was assigned to monitor the main architect fleet, while construction teams worked frantically on the reality manipulation device. Captain, Lieutenant Danny Crawford reported, the architect fleet has stopped moving. Why? Unknown. They're just sitting there about 1 light-year from our outer colonies, but they're broadcasting continuously now. What are they saying? Danny's face was pale as he translated the messages. They're negotiating with themselves, having debates about how to proceed. It's like they're multiple personalities in the same body. Chief Engineer Pete Morgan looked up from his repairs. Maybe 5,000 years of isolation wasn't good for their mental health. Or maybe they're not as unified as they appear, Sarah said thoughtfully. Danny, can you separate the individual voices in their transmissions? I'll try, Captain. After several hours of work, Danny managed to isolate different signal patterns from the architect fleet. Captain, I think I know what's happening. There are 3 distinct groups arguing with each other. One group wants to destroy everything immediately. One group wants to study the Confederation first. And one group seems to be questioning whether the original plan was correct. Sarah felt a spark of hope. They're having doubts. It gets better, Captain. The group that's questioning the plan keeps referencing humanity's achievements. Our technology, our alliances, our success in uniting the galaxy peacefully. Some of them think we might be worth preserving, or they think their entire philosophy was wrong. Sarah activated the communication system. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Blake. I need to speak with the President immediately. When Marcus Johnson's face appeared on screen, Sarah could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Captain, what's your status? Mr. President, the architects are having internal conflicts. Some of them are questioning whether humanity should be destroyed. Are you suggesting we try to communicate with them? I'm suggesting we try to make them question everything they believe. They created the council system because they thought younger species were too chaotic and dangerous to survive. We proved them wrong by building something better. President Johnson was quiet for a moment. What do you propose? Let me transmit the complete history of the Confederation to their fleet. Show them what we've accomplished. Show them that the species they tried to control have built a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. Captain, that's incredibly risky. If it doesn't work, you'll have given them detailed intelligence about our capabilities. Mr. President, if Project Prometheus doesn't work, we're all dead anyway. This might be our only chance to avoid a war that could destroy the galaxy. After a long pause, Marcus nodded. Do it, Captain. Send them everything. Sarah began transmitting the complete historical records of the Confederation. The story of humanity's betrayal and exodus, the discovery of the sacrificed species, the building of a new galactic order based on equality and justice. As the transmission continued, the arguing among the architect fleet grew more intense. Some voices demanded immediate attack, others called for further study, and a few began to suggest that maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about everything. We who once called ourselves architects now seek to become students, it announced to the assembly. For 5 millennia, we believed that order required control and that diversity led to chaos. The species of this confederation have proven us wrong. President Johnson stood to respond. The Terran Confederation welcomes all beings who seek to build rather than destroy, to protect rather than sacrifice, to unite rather than divide. We bring knowledge of technologies beyond your current understanding, the architect continued. But more importantly, we bring the wisdom of our failures. We offer both as contributions to the civilization you have built. Admiral Stone smiled as she watched the assembly vote to accept the architect application for membership. The same species that had created the corrupt council system to control the galaxy had now chosen to join the organization that had replaced it. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not M. Admiral Carol Stone stood on the command deck of the massive space station housing Project Prometheus and watched the final preparations taking place. Dr. Emma Rodriguez and her team had worked for 9 straight days to complete the reality manipulation device, and now it hummed with barely contained energy. "Final systems check complete," reported Chief Engineer Pete Morgan over the communication system. "The device is ready for activation." President Marcus Johnson stood beside Carol, his face grim with the weight of the decision they were about to make. In the past 24 hours, Captain Blake's historical transmission had caused chaos within the Architect fleet. "Status report on the Architect response," Marcus requested. Colonel Lisa Barnes activated her intelligence display. "The fleet has split into 3 factions. Roughly 60 ships want to proceed with the original plan to destroy us. About 80 ships want to study us further before making a decision. And 60 ships now believe their entire mission was wrong from the beginning." "What about their immediate threat level?" "The militant faction launched an attack force 2 hours ago. 30 ships heading directly for our core worlds. They'll arrive in 6 hours. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her control console. "The reality device is ready, but we've never tested it at full power. We don't know if it will work or if it will destroy everything within 10 light years." General Kevin Taylor joined them on the command deck, wearing full combat gear. "The Third Fleet is in position to intercept the Architect attack force, but our projections show we'll lose 70% of our ships. Casualties? 3 million personnel. And that's just the opening battle." Admiral Stone felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. She had spent decades fighting to protect the Confederation, and now she faced the possibility of destroying it to save it. "President Johnson, we need your decision. Do we activate Project Prometheus?" Marcus looked out at the stars where millions of Confederation citizens lived their lives, unaware that their existence hung in the balance. "Captain Blake, what's the status of your diplomatic efforts?" Sarah's voice crackled over the communication system from her position near the Architect fleet. "Mr. President, the moderate faction is growing stronger. They're fascinated by our historical records. Some of them are starting to believe that humanity represents successful evolution, not dangerous chaos. Can you get them to stop the attack? I'm trying, sir. But the militant faction won't listen to them. They believe the moderate group has been contaminated by exposure to human ideas." Dr. Rodriguez checked her readings. "Sir, we're running out of time. The attacking Architect ships will be within weapons range of our colonies in 5 hours. If we're going to use the device, it has to be now." President Johnson closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of all the species that had joined the Confederation seeking protection from the chaos of the galaxy. "Dr. Rodriguez, will the device affect only the attacking ships? If we calibrate it correctly, we can target just the militant faction's vessels, but there's a risk of affecting nearby space as well." "What kind of risk?" "We might accidentally create a region where their advanced technology doesn't work. Or we might make their ships phase out of normal space entirely." General Taylor stepped forward. "Mr. President, I have another proposal." "Go ahead, General." What if we don't use the device as a weapon? What if we use it to demonstrate our capabilities to all three factions? How? We create a small pocket of altered space near their fleet. Nothing dangerous, just a demonstration that we have technology they don't understand. Show them that. We're not the weak species they expect to conquer. Admiral Stone considered the idea. That might work. If we can prove that we're technologically capable of defending ourselves, the moderate faction might be able to convince the militants to negotiate. Dr. Rodriguez ran calculations on her computer. It's possible. We could create a temporary zone where normal physics don't apply. Make it clear that we could have targeted their ships but chose not to. And if it doesn't work, then we activate the device at full power and hope we can stop the attack force before they reach our worlds. President Johnson made his decision. Do it. Create the demonstration zone. Dr. Rodriguez and her team began the activation sequence. Energy readings spiked across the station as the reality manipulation device powered up to partial capacity. Targeting empty space near the Architect fleet, Emma reported. Activating in 3, 2, 1. A section of space near the alien fleet suddenly began behaving according to different physical laws. Stars appeared to bend around an invisible mass. Energy patterns flowed in impossible directions. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold like origami. The effect lasted for exactly 60 seconds, then normal physics resumed. Captain Blake, report on Architect reaction, Admiral Stone requested. Admiral, their entire fleet has stopped moving. All three factions are broadcasting simultaneously. I'm detecting massive energy spikes from their ships. Are they preparing to attack? No, Admiral. I think they're scared. Colonel Barnes analyzed the Architect transmissions. Captain Blake is correct. The militant faction is demanding to know how we created that effect. The moderate faction is asking for detailed technical specifications. And the questioning faction is saying this proves humans have evolved beyond their original projections. Dr. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. They can't understand what we did because their technology is based on manipulating existing physical laws. We temporarily rewrote the laws themselves. President Johnson activated the communication system. Captain Blake, open a channel to all three Architect factions. Channel open, Mr. President. Marcus stepped forward to address the ancient aliens who had returned to destroy their creation. Architects of the old galaxy, this is President Marcus Johnson of the Terran Confederation. You have witnessed a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 50 years ago, your council system tried to sacrifice humanity to preserve their vision of galactic order. We refused to die. Instead, we built something better. We united species that your system had kept, divided. We protected worlds that your system would have sacrificed. The transmission continued across space to the waiting alien fleet. You created the Council to control and eliminate species you considered dangerous. But danger and chaos are not the same thing. We have brought order to the galaxy through cooperation, not domination. Admiral Stone stepped beside the President. We could have used our demonstration against your ships. We chose not to. This is the difference between your philosophy and ours. We offer you three choices, President Johnson continued. You can continue your attack and face the full power of our defenses. You can withdraw to wherever you came from and leave us in peace, or you can stay and learn from what we have built. The communication channel fell silent as the message traveled to the Architect fleet. After an hour that felt like an eternity, Captain Blake's voice crackled over the speakers. Mr. President, we're receiving responses from all three factions. What do they say? The militant faction is withdrawing. Their ships are leaving the galaxy entirely. They say that any species capable of rewriting reality is beyond their ability to control or destroy. And the others? The moderate faction wants to establish diplomatic relations. They're requesting permission to study our technology and governmental systems. What about the questioning faction? Sarah's voice carried a note of amazement. They're asking to join the Confederation. They say that everything they believed for 5,000 years was wrong, and they want to learn how to build something better. President Johnson felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he was carrying. Dr. Rodriguez, stand down, Project Prometheus. Standing down, Mr. President. All systems returning to normal operation. General Taylor removed his combat gear. Shall I order the fleet to stand down as well? Yes, General, but keep them ready just in case. Over the following weeks, first contact protocols were established with the moderate and questioning architect factions. The beings who had once planned to destroy the Confederation became students of the civilization they had almost eliminated. 6. Months later, Admiral Stone stood in the expanded assembly hall of New Geneva Station and watched as the first architect representative took their place among the delegates of the Terran Confederation. The being was a strange hybrid of organic and mechanical components, speaking through harmonics that made the air itself vibrate.